Today, we're here to figure out if the last season of Stranger Things Season 5 was more bad or good by quantifying the positives and the negatives of it. Now, I am not a numbers person, so I don't know why I'm trying to quantify anything, but the idea for this video came to me because I had an interesting experience watching Season 5, and I think people are being a little too harsh on it. I loved Stranger Things Seasons 1 and 2, and I liked Seasons 3 and 4. Just not as much, like many people. So I was excited for the final season, but I wasn't like dying to watch it. So I waited until all the volumes were out before I started. That meant that I had to dodge a lot of spoilers, and I was able to do it except for one tiny thing. But I did see a lot of people on Twitter criticizing the season. And I mean intense criticism like, this is trash, the writing is shit, it was pathetically bad. You know, not criticism like, I didn't like some things, so and so could be improved. No, it was harsh. So I was like, oh. I admit, part of me did wonder if it was coming mostly from shippers upset that their ship didn't become canon, so they were angry about it and throwing the whole season away because of it, or if it was people who kind of disliked the season, but then they see the echo chamber being extra negative, so they join in because people like to criticize popular things. I mean, it has been trendy to be hypercritical lately. But on the chance that it wasn't merely that, I prepared myself to watch a bad or at least a subpar season. And then I started my watch and I found myself really enjoying it actually. I would have to rewatch the earlier seasons to say this for sure, because I only watched each of them once and back when they aired. But I think I maybe liked season 5 more than I liked 3 and 4. The highlights of season 3 were the fun friendship mall scenes with Elle and Max, and the introduction of Robin and her shenanigans with Steve. And then Vecna's story in season 4 was as interesting as it was horrifying, but I think I found myself more entertained by season 5 for whatever reason. Even the finale, I did not dislike it. And listen, I've been traumatized by bad finales. Without spoiling any, I am still not over a certain British twin sister, I am not over a piece of rebar, and I am not over the retroactive character assassination that was the reveal of Gossip Girl's identity. And to me, Stranger Things is nowhere near that. So I guess I was surprised by the reaction, the level of anger and kind of maybe vitriolic is the wrong word, but like the really intense criticism of it. At the same time though, I also felt that the finale and the whole season definitely had flaws. It's not a perfect final season or a perfect ending. The closest to a perfect series finale that I've ever seen is probably the Lost finale, because no, they were not dead all along. And yes, the show did answer all of the questions. But even that finale has a thing or two that I tweak to make it better. And for Stranger Things, there are absolutely valid criticisms to be made. But I still kind of wanted to tweet saying that I liked the season for X, Y, and Z reasons. And that's when I realized that I didn't know how to express why I liked it. All I knew is that I was pretty entertained throughout every episode. I was never bored and I never checked my phone while I'm watching anything. I was never annoyed by anything. I didn't dislike any specific plot line. And unlike most shows released within the last decade, I didn't think that the characters were bland and uncharismatic with forced lines. No, the characters are still great. But how do I explain or express what I liked about the season, or why I think the season is good, or at least more good than bad? So I decided to put it to the test and come up with an empirical answer to the question, is the season good or bad? I'm gonna list and discuss the positives of the season versus the negative of the season as items, and see if in the end we have more of one or the other. It's like Robin's little whiteboard with you rule on one side and you suck on the other. So yeah, you can definitely say that this video is my you rule versus you suck list for season 5 of Stranger Things. Obviously, this is entirely subjective because what I consider a positive may very well be a neutral or even a negative for you. And sometimes it's 1 versus 1, but a negative has more weight because it's that bad. Or a positive really gets you, so it outweighs more of the bad. But I think this analysis is the closest that I'm gonna get to figuring out my own take of my subjective yet numerically objective opinion on whether the season has more positives or negatives. And maybe after I'll be able to better verbalize why I like it and express it better. Please tell me which items you agree with, which ones you would flip columns, or what positives and negatives of the season you would add that I didn't include. So here we go. A, the negatives, aka you suck. I'm starting with the negatives because I like things to end on a good note, you know? I'd rather the takeaway feeling from my videos be uplifting rather than just me complaining. So we're gonna complain now and compliment later. The first negative, in my opinion, of season 5, which is the final season of Stranger Things, is 1. Plot holes and retcons. This could be a really big negative for me because I really hate plot holes. They drive me insane. Most shows are bound to have one or two here and there, but if they have a lot of them, it's such poor writing and just lack of care, I think. I'll be honest though, I did not watch this season of Stranger Things and came out of it feeling that there were too many plot holes. That's why I said it could be a negative for me, not that it already is. The thing is, I don't know how many plot holes Stranger Things had exactly, because unfortunately I don't remember a lot about the early seasons. Like I said, I only watched each of them one time back when it was airing for the first time. And for some reason, the details of this show just didn't stick with me. The overall plot did, but like the small details didn't. I usually have a pretty good memory for TV shows, even years later, but not for Stranger Things apparently. I'm definitely gonna rewatch the whole show now that it's over, but the point is that it's harder for me to pinpoint plot holes if I don't remember the details. I can't really tell that new information doesn't add up to previous lore if I don't remember the old information, you know? What I know is that people online have said that there are many holes. But I can't just believe that either, because sometimes people get that wrong and they miss an explanation and they think there's a plot hole when and where there actually isn't one. I see it happen a lot with some other shows. So I did some research to see for myself which plot holes people were complaining about. And let me say, I am iffy on some of them. I did notice a few things myself prior to doing any of this research. So let me start with that because it's easier. Like, why was everyone touching all the vines in the Upside Down? That had me stressed while I was watching. Did they forget that they can't do that because they're all connected? Unless the vines were dried and dead by this point, but they looked the same to me, as in still alive. So also, there's not supposed to be any water in the Upside Down, right? I think because of the whole like pool thing with Barb in season 1. But suddenly there's a full tank just conveniently there. I don't know, let me know of any plot holes that you caught, or if there are any that people are claiming to be holes but that is not. But you know, despite listing this as my first negative, since there are at least a few holes, especially regarding the lore of the Upside Down, and I don't love that, I will still defend this somewhat, because some of the things that people are calling either plot holes or unexplained and unanswered are not that. In my opinion, at least, it's not a season like riddled with plot holes. There's just a few here and there. Like an example of these things that people are making it out to be holes or unanswered that I don't think are at all. Oh, what happened to the pregnant women in the Upside Down lab? Well, they're gone. The whole Upside Down is gone, so you know, no mystery there. We have the answer. It's not spelled out for us, but it's obvious, you know, if you use kind of common sense. How did Joyce and Hopper go to high school with Henry when he's several years younger than them? Well, I don't know about their high school and in the United States, but my high school in a different country was huge, like huge. More than 1,000 kids per grade, and it was the same school from ages 7 to 18. And like, we have plenty of different buildings, so typically you would have like the younger kids in this cluster of buildings and then the older kids on this cluster of buildings. However, it's all the same property. And absolutely, without a doubt, a 13 or 12-year-old would occasionally go by the high schooler buildings. So this just doesn't register as a plot hole for me personally, based on my experience. Hopper getting his job back after being presumably dead is a little weird maybe, but I mean, he's not dead. He could walk in and prove that he's not dead by, being alive. People know him, so I don't see why they wouldn't hire him back, honestly. It's a small town, they probably don't have a lot of candidates. Argyle lives elsewhere, so it makes sense that we didn't see him. The doctor, his story was complete, so we also didn't need to see him. All these characters not being there isn't really a hole. How was Max completely able-bodied after what happened? That's honestly, in my opinion, just TV show logic. People usually heal faster and better than they would in real life, but that's normal in TV shows. And it's not implausible that the school would streamline her curriculum so that she would be able to graduate in time. There are people with examples of similar stories happening in real life. Why is the Upside Down stuck on the day that Will went missing? Probably because that's the day that it was created, and it's a wormhole, or so either time isn't passing or it's passing but it's not noticeable because nobody is actually there to change anything, right? So how would it even change? It makes sense to me that it still looks the same as the day it was created. And the last example I'll give is that I've also seen the complaint that it's a plot hole that we didn't see what happened to Derek's parents after being drugged. And it's like, well, they ate sleeping drugs. So what happened is that they woke up later and they were fine. We know that. Some of these things, you just have to think about them. They don't need to be spelled out for us. Just use your common sense and media literacy and you can get the answer. So I really can't list them as a negative of the season, which is what lessens the impact of plot holes as an item here. There were not as many plot holes as people are claiming that there were. If there were, honestly, I would make this item count for 2 points instead of just 1 because I really hate plot holes. But there are honestly not that many of them. 2. Unanswered mysteries and off-screen development that led to wasted potential. This is similar to plot holes, but not really. People kind of conflate them, but they are technically separate things with different definitions. And I do think the season left a few unanswered questions, which for a mystery show, it's not great. Or, it had some important scenes happening outside of our view and we can only assume what happened. Other times, they simply did not explore certain arcs and relationships to their full potential or really in depth. Here are some questions that I personally still have about the show. Who unlocked Will's door in the pilot? Although I assume it was Henry. Was Henry already able to reach our world directly back then? I don't remember, but he seems like the only plausible answer to this. Another thing, how was Will okay, even though he was still connected to the hive mind while they were destroying Vecna? I guess we didn't see him doing that, and now I guess there's no more hive mind. But the mind flayer is still technically, I assume, alive in the abyss, right? We just got rid of the connection that was the wormhole. So I'm not sure there. But the point is, this is significant, whether Will is or is not still kind of connected to the hive mind. Was he okay while Vecna was being killed? And we didn't see that. And although we can assume what happened, probably, it seems important enough that maybe we should have seen it. Another thing is that one really gets me is why did Vecna need specifically 12 kids? It was implied that if he lost even one of them, he couldn't complete his world merging plan. So why did he need all 12 of them? Why couldn't he just do it without Holly if she was being such trouble? And what exactly is the new world that the mind flayer showed Henry? And why does he think that that's better than the world we have, to the point where he wants to create it? Or in other words, why did he choose to work with the mind flayer? And what's the deal with that rock that little Henry picked up? Although the showrunners have apparently said that there will be a spin-off focused on the rock, so I'm sure it's intentionally left as a mystery to be explored and revealed on another show. I can respect that, honestly. So yeah, there are a few unanswered questions in my opinion. And I know there is the argument of, oh, a show doesn't need to answer every question or explain everything. It's okay and maybe even good that they leave some of it unanswered or a mystery, because that's life. We don't get every answer in life. And I can agree with that take up to a point. Some shows can strike a nice balance with ambiguity and some lack of answers while still being satisfying enough. But it's not my personal preference ever, really. And I don't know if the fact that that emulates real life is enough of a justification, honestly. Because it's not real life, right? It's a piece of art made for entertainment. So if we spend a long time invested in the mysteries and the lore of a show, then yeah, of course it's gonna be frustrating when it gets to the end and we are left with unanswered mysteries and questions. Now, Stranger Things didn't leave me with too many of them, so it's not the worst offender for this. And I already discussed that some of the things people complained were unanswered actually had answers. I talked about this in item number 1. So I personally did not end the season feeling too frustrated, like I don't know anything. I feel like they wrapped up most of it with enough answers, at least. But there are obviously some things in Stranger Things that seem like they have no answer. And there is relevant development that happened off screen. And even if it's not that relevant, like for example, it would have been nice to see Joyce realize that she went to school with Henry. You know, it's not an absolutely necessary scene, but it would have been a scene with good emotional weight.
The show included this. It set this up, so we deserved to see the payoff.
I wanted to see it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there was a lot of potential there as well as with other scenes. And this potential was wasted because they never explored certain storylines or connections in depth, or just not at all. Other examples could be Max and Dustin connecting over shared grief, more of Max and Elle's friendship before Elle disappeared, Will and Jonathan being brothers. You get the point, right? 3. The military. When I say the military, I guess I mostly mean their ending, because I think we all agree that it made no sense for the party to be captured there, especially while seeming so unaware that it was going to happen. They were incredibly prepared for the crawls, but not this time. They shot a bunch of military personnel on the way in. They must have known that the soldiers were going to be waiting for them as they exited the gate. So either we needed them coming up with an alternative route out of the Upside Down, or at least have them be prepared and expecting the military to be there on the way out, because of course they would be. And then the military just lets them go, which it wouldn't. I know they rescued the children and technically kind of defeated the end of the world, and the military's true interest was in 11, so it does make some sense that they would pack up and leave now that they think Elle is dead and there's no more Upside Down to study or investigate. So I can see an argument being made that covering up, killing or arresting all these people would be more trouble than it's worth, but I do think realistically at least Hopper and Nancy would be arrested for murdering a bunch of US soldiers. And that's me being generous, maybe. So maybe this also fits the plot hole category, but it was such a big inconsistency that I thought it deserved its own item. Especially since the part that bothers me more is not even the hole, it's the party being caught by surprise when they exited the gate. Also, the scenes of just the military personnel talking to each other, I felt like we had a lot of those scenes, like with Dr. K and the other guy. And those scenes were kind of boring. We didn't need that many of them. So, you know, yeah, the military as a whole, overall, it was kind of a negative for the season.
I like the military being stationed in the Upside Down, though. That was kind of a cool development.
4. Weirdly timed conversations. As the name of the item says, there were some conversations that took place at strange times this season. It's like they would break up the action or the tension of a scene to suddenly have a heartfelt conversation or an argument. Max and Holly doing that right before they escape Henry's mind, and Dustin and Steve while they're searching the Upside Down lab come to mind as some of the biggest examples of that. Even the timing of Will's coming out scene was maybe a little strangely placed in the timeline of things. 5. No Enzo payoff. This might be a nitpick since it's a small detail, but generally speaking, when writing a show or a movie, the rule is you don't include anything if there will not be a payoff for it later, right? So why show more than one scene of Robin promising to take Vicky on a date at this specific restaurant and then completely drop it? We never saw them not going becoming a problem for the relationship because Robin broke her promise, which could have been one ending, although I think it wouldn't make sense anymore since Vicky knows everything that is going on now. And worse, we never saw them actually go. That would obviously be the payoff. And how cool to see a lesbian couple in the 80s out to dinner together. Hell, like they could have had Hopper's proposal be in the same restaurant and show us that the girls were there too in the background if needed, at least that, just to have some payoff for setting that up, It felt like just a setup with no payoff. 6. No demos in the finale. I struggled with whether to put this as a negative, a positive, or just leave it neutral, primarily because I think I understand the decision to not have any demogorgons, demo dogs, or demo bats in the finale. The season already had some pretty long scenes with these creatures. Some great scenes where they're very prominent and utilized well. And it's fair if they maybe thought that the finale would be repetitive if the characters had to fight the same monsters again after we've just seen it a couple episodes prior. And I don't think this is a plot hole. The Abyss looks like a vast world.
It's like, imagine if you traveled to the Amazon forest today. Just because there are a lot of wonderful animals out there, it doesn't mean you're gonna see one right away, or at all during your whole stay. They spread out, it's a big jungle, so it's plausible that it's the same with the Abyss. It's a whole world.
It makes sense that the demos were all scattered all over the world, while Vecna was using all of his mental focus on the 12 kids and on pulling a whole world down. He's not controlling the demos at that moment, and to me that adds up fine. So I tried to be fair and not list the lack of demogorgons as a negative of the finale, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I tried, okay? I tried. I tried to be fair and not list the lack of them as a negative, but I couldn't. Not because it's a plot hole, but because a finale without them just didn't sit right with my soul, okay? Even if there is a fair reason for making that choice. Because, they're one of the most iconic parts of the show, of the entire show. What are probably the 3 images most associated with Stranger Things? Like, when a casual person that maybe didn't even watch it thinks of the show, what do they picture? Joyce's Christmas lights over the letters? Bald Elle with the bleeding nose and the dress and maybe waffles? And the flower head of the Demogorgon, right? So it feels wrong to not even see them in the finale. If the showrunners really didn't want it to be repetitive, and that's not just my random theory, I assume that's the reason for this choice. But then they could put the demo bats back in. We didn't see them at all this season, so it wouldn't have been that repetitive. Maybe even a demo of something new. And I kind of love the demo dogs. That plot line with Dustin raising a little demo puppy is one of my absolute favorites. So I really missed them here in the finale. Yeah, it's really just that I think a series finale of Stranger Things should include its most iconic monsters. It felt like something was missing without them there. Seriously, I would take even just us seeing them off in the distance in the Abyss. Or maybe some of them just ran by the truck when they were in the Upside Down. Or even better, make them a part of the final fight, but not in a repetitive way. Since Will learned that he can control them now, why not have him take control of a demo dog and a Demogorgon in the final battle and use it to help the party? Use them to attack the Mind Flayer. Or even use a whole army of them. That would have been such a full circle moment, would have been so cool. These monsters terrorized them all along, and now they're being used as allies. I would have loved that. Oh, and also, I think that the lack of demos of any kind in the finale made the Abyss seem way less menacing than the Upside Down as a location. It already looks a lot better, right? The Abyss is so light and spacious, contrasting how dark and cramped feeling and full of icky stuff the Upside Down is. So the fact that the Upside Down usually has some monsters, but the Abyss only had, that we saw at that moment, Vecna and the Mind Flayer, it really made it feel much less threatening and less foreboding than the Upside Down. Which maybe is fair enough. Maybe the wormhole should be creepier than the actual world, the actual dimension. So fine, that's fine. I guess that's not a problem necessarily. I still miss the demos. 7. Callie's death. So Callie's death isn't a negative because of sentimental reasons, as I don't think she's a character that many of us connected a lot with. From what I remember, she started out somewhat unlikable in the previous season, and she didn't get much of a chance to shine in season 5 either. But it still sucks that in a season where very few important characters died, the young woman who was mistreated and abused for most of her life was the one chosen to die. She's also one of the few people of color in the cast, so it's extra nasty that she was like the only death. Yeah, that's a big negative. 8. Ambiguity of Elle's fate. To an extent, enjoying ambiguity in a TV show is a matter of personal taste. Some people like more open-ended storylines. They prefer it. I personally don't, especially when it relates to something as important as the life or death fate of one of your main characters. I'll be honest, I personally think Elle is alive and Mike was not just coping. Because the soldiers had those big speaker, sonar, whatever they are, the things that weaken Eleven, they had them and they were using them against her. We know those things are very painful for her and they stop her powers completely from working. So if she's standing right in the gates to the Upside Down, she is right within range of a bunch of those things. She should have been in a lot of pain there and unable to use her powers. So how was she able to communicate with Mike in the void? There are only two options. If she's dead, it's a huge plot hole because it couldn't have happened. If she's alive, it works because she wasn't actually standing there in the gate within range. She was elsewhere, so the device didn't affect her powers. Exactly like Mike explains. So to me, that pretty much confirms that she's alive. So I think if the showrunners wanted true ambiguity, they should have come up with something else and also not shown us actual scenes of her escaping and then in Iceland. They should have just had Mike say the same speech about it, but without us, the audience, being able to see Elle in actual scenes, because the scenes, to me at least, imply that it's actually happening. So, to me, it's not really ambiguous. She is either alive or it's a huge plot hole. Therefore, yeah, she's alive. Because is it really a plot hole when it was addressed? Likely not. They thought about it, so likely not. Therefore, logically, it seems that the only conclusion is that she is alive. The problem is not everybody saw it that way, and that just leads to arguments and unnecessary debates, and I just find the whole thing a bit annoying. I don't like that the showrunners wanted to leave it ambiguous and open-ended. I think them making that choice gives the impression that they don't want to commit to what actually happened. They want to please both sides. So I don't know, I don't like ambiguity as a narrative choice here. And I don't think they even succeeded in making it as ambiguous as they wanted it to be, like I said. Also, regardless of if she's alive or dead, it's not an ending that I would like for her. I do think it is, unfortunately, fairly realistic, so I'm not complaining too much about it, but I am complaining a little bit because, unfortunately, it feels a little, I guess, thematically hollow, maybe. It's very sad that in a show largely about this traumatized little girl finding a family, finding friends, and building all these new connections after years of isolation and abuse, she had to leave her friends and family in the end. I don't like that as the conclusion of the storyline of someone who fought so hard to be with her found family. But I also think that she can and will be very happy in life still. She will miss them, of course, but she also always wanted freedom, and now she truly has it. She can start over and rebuild again and find a new family and have a great life. Her having to fake her death and disappear does not mean she'll be sad and alone forever at all. I believe she'll have a good life, even if she never reunites with anybody from the show. But it's just not the ending that I wish we had for her. Obviously, I would rather she has a good life with Mike and Hopper and everyone else. And this is all even worse if you believe that she actually died. Maybe it's a realistic ending, and I get that, but it's not satisfying. 9. Pacing. With the issue of some important developments happening off screen, that seems to indicate that maybe the season had some pacing issues. To be clear, I almost didn't even include pacing as a negative because I didn't feel it being poorly done during my watch. I was never bored and feeling that a scene was dragging on for too long, and I never thought that any particular scene was too rushed either. The season didn't feel too slow or too fast, as opposed to season 4 and I'm pretty sure season 3 also, where I definitely felt that some scenes dragged on for too long. For 5, I really thought the pacing was fine, but then I was like, but if so much had to happen off screen because we didn't have time for it, maybe that reflects on the pacing, right? Maybe some scenes needed to be shorter. Probably the part with the kids in Henry's mind, it did get a little bit repetitive there maybe. Or also the repetitive military scenes when they're just talking to each other, right? Shorten those to make room to add some details that were more necessary or more enjoyable. You know, maybe they don't even have to be necessary, but just cool to have. Like for example, Mike and his mom having a proper conversation about the upside down, or Joyce realizing that the monster who's been terrorizing her family is somebody that she knew in school, like I said before. Those scenes are not essential to the story. We don't need them at all, but I would have liked to watch them, and I think they would have been nice scenes, more impactful than just the kids or the military, and even maybe a little bit cathartic. So with better pacing, perhaps we could have had more of those scenes, or you know, the fate of Vicky, that kind of stuff. I guess what I mean is with better pacing, there could have been enough time to explore the relationships more in depth, not so superficially. So pacing isn't a huge negative in my opinion. It could get like half a point instead, but it's still worth including it on the list. But I think that's all for the negatives actually. B, the positives, aka you rule. Okay, now that I've complained enough, it's time to get more cheerful in here and talk about the things that I think season 5 of Stranger Things did pretty well. And do you think I pulled off a vaguely 80s looking outfit and makeup? There is like bright green eyeshadow and bright pink eyeshadow and a lot of blush. 1, great acting. The first positive I think is obvious, so let me get it out of the way. Stranger Things gives us great acting performances for most of its characters. The cast has always been very talented, and season 5 was no exception, including the newcomers. I could always feel the emotions they were trying to portray with their characters. They feel natural and realistic, and that really helped strengthen my immersion in the season and build my connection with the characters. So yeah, the show greatly benefits from the actors' performances. 2, characters are still charismatic. This is also a pretty straightforward item. I don't need to explain it. It's simply that I find the characters of Stranger Things charismatic, and that makes them fun and or compelling to watch. I'm someone that always prioritizes character over plot, so this is a big positive for me. It should almost count as 1.5 points or 2 points, because like it really matters a lot to me. I can deal with a good, not great, or even a mid plot as long as I'm really invested in the characters of a show. And I'm not saying the plot of this season of Stranger Things was mid. I actually liked it well enough. I'm just speaking in general terms. Stranger Things is, I think, more plot driven than character driven, actually, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have amazing characters that help the plots be even better. 3, characterizations and decisions felt in line with whom they've always been. Sometimes you watch a show and you get the distinct impression that this character wouldn't do this. The writers made the character do this action because they needed it to advance the plot, but it doesn't feel plausible or like it fits who the character is. And honestly, I didn't feel that in Stranger Things season 5 at all. Pretty much every choice that the characters made, every line that they said, the way they behaved, all of it made sense with who they are as people and the journey they've experienced so far, the point they're at in life right now, and so on. The characters were consistent in who they are, in my opinion, and that's pretty important. 4, character arcs had believable growth. This sort of connects to the point I made before. Since the characters are consistent and, I guess, written in character, the growth that they show by the end of the season is very believable. For better or worse, I can see all of those characters doing what they ended up doing and ending up where they ended up. Even Nancy, I saw people saying that she ended up being like her mother despite the fact that she didn't want to be that. But I don't know, just because their hair looked like doesn't mean that they are actually alike. So I didn't get the impression that she sort of became her mother like at all. Nancy is clearly still being a badass and chasing her dreams by dropping out of college to go get the job that she wants. That's not being like her mother in the sense of settling down with a family, and that's not the studious Nancy of season 1. The growth makes sense, and I think it's believable that she makes that decision in the end after being through everything that she went through. So she's just an example that I wanted to expand on. But yeah, I think all the characters grew in a believable way that aligns with who they are as people. And that's important to make it feel realistic. 5. Dustin's grief and friendship arc. I thought that the show dealt pretty well with Dustin's loss of a close friend and almost like a mentor, big brother figure in Eddie. We definitely see his rebellion first, which is part of grief, you know, him wanting so badly to do right by his friend, because it must be so awful to know that he's innocent but have to deal with people who don't believe that. So there's all that anger and you really feel for him. Then we see him snapping at Steve and constantly pushing him away, and it's still sad. But then there's the realization, at least for Steve, the realization, I think we all already knew that, but you know, he figures out that it's all just fear of watching a friend die again. And it makes perfect sense, right? Of course he's angry. And of course he's terrified. When they reach this understanding together and Dustin breaks down crying, oh, it was so painful. It was a really well done arc, I thought. 6. Holly and Max. Their friendship was so wholesome and they made for a great pair of allies. Max taking care of the younger girl and kind of taking on this responsible role was very cute, you know, helping Holly face her fears. It was all really great to watch.
Also, just in general, I love the concept of the kids of season 1 now being older and having to help a new group of kids. It's heartwarming and a natural evolution. They have the experience now, so they will protect the new kids.
To be honest, Holly was a standout character. I did not expect to become so invested in her, but I did. She was great. 7. Will's coming out arc. I thought it was really unique to use Vecna invading Will's mind and showing him a negative version of his coming out as the catalyst for him to actually come out. I've never seen, I don't think, any show ever tie a coming out to another plot point that specifically spurs it on, especially something more supernatural. So I thought it was clever to make better use of Vecna's mind powers and use that to further explore Will's identity. The scene itself was maybe not the best it could have been because it was kind of jammed in an awkward place during the story, but his speech was very touching and very emotional, and I like how everyone reacts. So I just thought it was overall like well done, and I was glad that we have it. 8. Robin's radio show. I loved Robin's radio show. The way that she and the narrative used it as a cover to help the whole team plan their crawls was amazing. It makes perfect sense with her character and it being a way to unite and prepare their party while getting around military surveillance. Seriously, I love all the codes that she gives out and how she very naturally and perfectly integrates them into a normal radio DJ spiel. And I especially love the code song. That was so clever and so cute. I thought that whole thing with the radio was very fun and very exciting. It was probably actually one of my favorite parts of the season. 9. Great action scenes. The Demogorgon attack on the Wheelers, the demo dogs at the hospital, when the party tried to rescue the kids from the military, but then the Demogorgons in different places snatched them anyway. Vecna showing up and absolutely destroying the military. Even Holly and Derek trying to escape Henry. Those scenes were genuinely intense, exciting. They built the tension well, and I was so excited and like on the edge of my seat, especially the scenes with the demos. Both types of demos. I also liked the whole group working together in the final battle with everyone playing a role together but individually, you know, everyone having a specific part to play. And although the final battle was not the most exciting one of the show, I didn't necessarily want it to be much longer than what it was, to be honest. And it had the great ending of everyone like looking at Vecna and remembering all of the trauma that he inflicted on them, you know, while Joyce is cutting off his head. I felt bad for him, yes, because I can't help but feel bad when I see anybody suffering. It doesn't matter who it is. But it's a powerful scene, and it's a fitting emotional closure for the other characters. So overall, I really did enjoy the action of the season. I thought it was well done and typically pretty exciting. 10. The group putting plans together. I love a scene where a large group of characters gets together to come up with a plan of attack on any show. Like, that's one of my favorite things. And Stranger Things has always excelled at this. Watching the team, or rather the party, plan the crawl in episode 1 was so much fun for me. I love how they always bounce off of each other and how their contributions and ideas always mirror their personality in a way that really works. It's very well done. Like, their planning scenes are always really fun.
Also, I love how professional they've gotten. From episode 1 with the crawl. I mean, they've spent years at this point fighting stuff related to the Upside Down, so it makes perfect sense that they've perfected their techniques and materials to a pretty fine-tuned process now. I love it.
And this happens obviously multiple times this season with the crawls, with the tunnels. You know, including the huge group in the finale coming up with the final plan to defeat Vecna. That was great. I ate it up. 11. The comedy is still effective. Stranger Things has always had some very funny moments, breaking up the creepiness and the tension, and this season was no different. There were definitely funny line deliveries and quips, and just overall moments too. A highlight was definitely the scene of them sort of jailbreaking the kids from the military through the tunnels. I was genuinely laughing when the pipes burst and people are going into the stall and just, are you by chance looking for Mr. Watson? Like, it was great. Great scene, great comedic timing. I do really appreciate the comedy of this show. 12. More D&D tie-ins. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, and most of what I know about it comes from watching it be played on several TV shows, but I think it's a pretty cool concept for a game. So I always thought that it was unique and so creative that Stranger Things used D&D games to parallel the narrative, right? What happens in the game happens in their real life sometimes, like Will being caught by the monster in the beginning. And even better, the show used Dungeons and Dragons as a way for the kids to understand the mystery that they are living through, like calling the monster by the same name of a D&D monster, expanding on their theories by using the game as a basis, etc. They're little kids at the start of the show, so it's so fitting that they filter these awful experiences through a game in order to better understand and process them. So I was really happy to see more of that in the last season, mainly by them naming the other dimension as the Abyss, a name taken from D&D, just like Vecna, the Demogorgon, etc. And by them likening Will to a sorcerer now that he was exhibiting his own powers, which is a role that he also plays in the game. And then watching the original party plus Max play together in the end was really, really heartwarming. I mean, was a scene like that expected of them all playing the game in the finale? Yes, absolutely. But it was expected because we had to have a final scene like that. It would not be complete without that. It's that sweet, nice, emotional punch at the very end, right? I like it a lot. 12. Jonathan and Nancy being friends. Here's the thing. They were a cute couple in the earlier seasons, but they really felt disconnected lately. To me, it felt like their romantic relationship was already past the point of no return. But TV shows can be stubborn and refuse to break up couples, especially if they think that the fans love them. So I was pleasantly surprised to see them actually break up and stay friends. It shows maturity. It reminds us of the tight bond that they still have and will always have. But it doesn't keep them stuck in a relationship that has like lost its shine, you know? I think both of them will be happier as friends. 14. Lucas and Max reuniting. It was just very cute and it felt earned after the development of their relationship and Max being in a coma for so long. I don't have much to say about this, except that seeing them together again made me smile, and I love that he was always there for her playing the song, and that she felt him touching her hand and how that helped her, you know, escape Henry's mind and come back to the real world. It was all really, really sweet, I thought. 15. No redemption arc. I'm talking about Henry here, of course. And listen, I love a well-executed redemption arc, okay? I am the biggest sucker for it. I will always like it. And I would have still liked it if they gave Henry a redemption arc. I would have been like, aw, it's okay, we do forgive you, you know? But you know what else I love? An unapologetic villain who simply does not want to be redeemed. It's one of my favorite things about Leland Townsend, and I talked a lot about him in my video essay. He's someone who could still be redeemed, but he won't be because he doesn't regret anything. He has so much fun being evil, and he is happy being who he is. And Henry did the same thing here in season 5 of Stranger Things. And by the way, I really love Will for offering it.
Because it had never occurred to Will that Henry might have been a victim just like him, right? This is the first time that he's thinking of Henry like that. So of course he felt for Henry, wondering if the other boys suffered as much as he did. I think he absolutely should have felt a lot of sympathy and empathy for Henry there. And I love that he did and that he tried to help, telling Henry basically that he could still be saved. I always love a hero that is like this, and I think it says a lot about how great Will is as a person.
When presented with the opportunity to change his ways, Henry is just like, nah, I'm no victim. I chose this. Thanks though. And I'm like, yes, let some villains just be villains. I am here for this. A hot villain? Yeah, I'm here for this. Although, I will admit, after looking into the plot of the play, Stranger Things, The First Shadow, the play that tells Henry's origin story, and specifically the West End version even more than the Broadway version, I am now a little more pro-redemption for him. Actually, I went back on it. It's because he seemed like such a sweet character in the play. He and the girl that he liked were very cute together. You know, they kissed, they said I love you. So yeah, taking that backstory into account, I would have liked a redemption arc for him better than not. Because we see that he did start out as a good person who initially fought the Mind Flayer's control. He didn't just give in immediately because he was down for it. No, he actually did try to fight it. And that lends itself well to a redemption arc, I think. But since this is just stuff that is from the play and the actual TV show doesn't delve into that at all, then I think the lack of redemption works. And I'm back to my original point that it's cool sometimes to just let a villain be a villain. 16. None of the main characters die. Firstly, no, 11 doesn't die, in my opinion. We talked about why in the negative section when discussing that the supposed ambiguity of her fate wasn't actually all that ambiguous. She's alive, so that's why I'm saying none of the main characters die. But if you really think that she died, change the name of this item to 16. Only one of the main characters died. Now, I know that some of you would 100% put this in the negatives column because I've heard this argument about Stranger Things for years before the season even came out. You know, people saying, oh, the stakes are too low because we know they'll never kill the main characters. Everybody has plot armor. Stranger Things should kill main characters. Personally, I disagree. I like that they let all the main characters live. I will always prefer a happy ending for a lot of reasons. 1, these characters deserve it. 2, it's more joyous to watch them get their happy ending than not. And 3, real life already doesn't have enough happy endings, you know? Let us have them in fiction, in peace. I don't need like a shocking death to try and raise emotional stakes in every finale. I don't feel like it works as well as some showrunners want it to work. And I don't think a lack of death lowers the stakes. Because first of all, until you're done watching the show, you can never be 100% sure that they won't surprise you and actually kill one of the mains at some point. So while I maybe worry less about them, I still worry to some extent. Secondly, there are so many horrible things that can and do happen to everyone in Stranger Things. And watching those things unfold brings in so much dramatic tension. Because for me, the stakes can be really high, even when they don't involve the risk of actual death. Sometimes in some way, risk of injury or of losing a loved one is even more tense for me than just, oh, this character might die. So yeah, like for example, when Derek and Holly are running away, I knew they obviously were not going to die, but I was still nervous for them. And the stakes felt really high because they could still get hurt. And thirdly, the show actually has killed beloved characters before, right? Barb, Bob, Eddie. So if you really want to feel loss, it's there. Also, even if we don't care that much about the characters that do die, their death directly affects the characters that we do care about. You know, the characters that love them. And that is enough to raise the stakes for me. For example, I worried a lot about the Wheeler parents during the demo attack scene. The stakes were very high for me because they're Mike's parents and I care about Mike. I'm glad that they survived, mostly for Mike's sake. Also, if you're thinking about having emotionally impactful scenes on a TV show, and again, this is just me, but death does not necessarily accomplish that. You know, even in TV shows I love where important characters actually do die, the moments that impact me the most are rarely the deaths. So yeah, I know this season of Stranger Things only really killed the villain and a side character, but I'm happy about that. I am relieved. I'm sure that this will be the most unpopular opinion of the whole video because a lot of people really seem to disagree with this, but I stand by it. Although, you know what? Some of you complain that the show never kills any meaningful characters, but then you also didn't like that Elle died if you think that she died. So like, what do you want? You want high stakes main character deaths, but only if it's the right main character? It feels like maybe the writers can never win with this unless they kill the one right character that will satisfy most people. I don't know. All I know is that I am happy that nobody or almost nobody died. 17. Wormhole. This next positive is another one that I really liked a lot because I actually thought it was pretty cool that the Upside Down is a wormhole connecting two dimensions rather than being its own dimension. We always assumed that the Upside Down was an alternate dimension, and honestly, I wasn't expecting any twists or new information about that. I also really liked the explanation of how it was created. The US government knew that the alternate dimension, the abyss, existed. So when Dr. Brenner made 11 make contact with the Demogorgon from the abyss, it created the wormhole connecting the two, right? And that's a pretty cool explanation. Because when our dimension made contact with the alternate dimension via 11 in the void, it created a bridge between the two dimensions. The bridge being, of course, the Upside Down. I think making the Upside Down a wormhole makes sense for it being a sort of inverted version of our world because it's almost like it combined the two worlds that it was linking, making it a twisted version of both of them together. It's an imprint of our world with elements of the abyss, since it's a pathway linking our world to the abyss. Yeah, I just thought that was really cool and I really liked this wormhole reveal a lot. And that is actually my last positive as well. C. Conclusion. So my friends from the Upside Down, we have the final results. If we are to believe that numbers don't lie, then season 5 of Stranger Things is more good than bad to me. Because there were 17 positive attributes versus only 9 negative ones. Or 10 negatives, because I might want to give 2 points instead of 1 to the wasted potential. But still, it's 17 to 10. You rule more than you suck. And what grade would I give the season out of 10? For personal enjoyment? Honestly, probably a 7.5, 8 out of 10. I really did have a fun time. For how well it's done from a more objective standpoint, I think a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe a 7. Is 7 maybe too high? Maybe. Or it could be also depending on the plot holes. If there are too many that I'm not catching, then it goes down to a 6. But either way, it's still above average. And I think this is actually another thing that matters a lot to me. I have a hard time with most shows from this decade because, like I said in the beginning, I always find the characters bland and uncharismatic. Their lines always seem forced. There's something always off. These shows are all like 3 or 4 out of 10 to me, with rare exceptions. On the other hand, if I start a new show today that I've never seen before, but it's an older show, like from the 2000s or 2010s, I typically get invested and immersed very quickly, like within 1 to 3 episodes, and I would rate them probably at least a 7. Depending on the show, maybe a 10 out of 10. But for modern shows, it's really hard to get invested in anything. There's always something missing from them. I can't explain it. And I was invested in Stranger Things Season 5. Despite its flaws, it's still more entertaining than practically everything I have tried from the last decade. And I do watch a lot of shows. So even just by comparison, it's better than the rest in my personal opinion. In the end, it doesn't really matter how many items of you suck versus you rule we can put on a list. It could have 10 bad things versus 5 good ones. But if you enjoyed yourself and was genuinely entertained while watching the season, it's still a good season to you. Or maybe you have a stronger emotional connection or attachment to the characters and that makes it worth it. Or it's the opposite. Maybe your list has 10 good things versus 5 bad ones, but the bad ones are really egregious to you, and that's enough to make the season bad. That's totally fair too. I do wish that the season was better written in terms of some plot holes and off-screen development. And some of the character relationships weren't explored as in depth as I would have liked. But aside from that, I guess my conclusion with this exercise is that I am sufficiently pleased with season 5 and the finale, and I enjoyed myself more than I expected to, if I'm being honest. If you hated the show, please don't think that me coming to this conclusion is me trying to invalidate your take. I'm just offering my perspective, and it just happens to be a more positive one because I thought that some people were being too harsh on the show. But I really am sorry if you hated or were very disappointed in the season. Maybe it's expectations are key because mine weren't very high, so I was sufficiently satisfied with what we got. There are issues in season 5 and I recognize them. Some bother me more than others. I hope that you can enjoy the good that is also in it, but I do know how much it sucks to be disappointed with the finale if it's a show that you really love. So you do have my sympathies for sure. But if you're just hating on it because it's trendy and gets traction on social media, that's cynical, but you do you, I guess. I'm not here to judge either. And if you liked the season, I'm glad you did. I did too. Now we have company. And I think this season absolutely does not ruin the show at all. I guess in the end, my final verdict is I would say that season 5 of Stranger Things was a solid season with issues, and there is for sure some wasted potential, but these issues are not big or impactful enough to make me not enjoy watching it. It's a more generic season and not as exceptional and as well written as the early seasons. But that was expected, and it's a generic good still, you know? The kind of generic that it's fun, it's still compelling, and I didn't leave it feeling frustrated or annoyed. So why do I still consider it a good season, you know, numbered items aside? The real answer is very simple. It's because watching it was a positive experience. And like I said, it was even a much better experience than I have with most modern shows. I enjoyed myself while watching, I really did. So that's why it's ultimately a good season for me. Let me know what items you would add, switch, or remove from my list. And feel free to vent your feelings about the season in the comments. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, it really helps. Subscribe to see more from me or check out the video essays I already have. And oh crap.